The Nonprofit MBA purpose is to provide new business insights and fresh creative ideas for executive directors and their teams that will help them improve their organization. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Hello, everyone. This is Stephen Halasnik. I will be your host for today's Nonprofit MBA Podcast. For those of you who are not familiar with who I am, I'm one of the co-founders of Financing Solutions. And since 2012, we have been the largest provider of lines of credit to small nonprofits in the United States. And if you're interested in learning more, please visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Of course, when I say more, I mean about the line of credit. And today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Nick Jain from Eagle Rock CFO. And today, we're going to be covering how nonprofits can manage their finances better. A little bit about Nick. He is a co-founder of Eagle Rock CFO Services, where he helps nonprofits unlock hidden cash and make smarter financial decisions. Before launching Eagle Rock, he worked in consulting at McKinsey and in investing at Bain Capital and Greenlight Capital. And he has led 3 companies operationally. Nick graduated from the Harvard Business School. So Nick, welcome to today's Nonprofit MBA Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephen. Really excited to be here.
So, Nick, I've asked this of every guest since the new administration came in last year. Are you hearing what have you heard from your nonprofit clients in regards to how this administration has affected them?
Look, there's been a lot of, at the risk of, or I'm going to try and avoid getting political here, but obviously this administration has different priorities in terms of what it considers okay versus not okay. There's obviously been a shift away from, let's say, DEI-related efforts that's impacted nonprofits that act in those spaces. Conversely, there's areas that this administration favors and areas that other nonprofits are, a little bit more active. So, for example, if you're a nonprofit acting on Second Amendment rights, you're probably better funded in the current environment than you were under the prior administrations.
No, I didn't think about that. My business partner said something a year ago to me, and I'll run it by you. I don't know if you have an opinion on it. He said to me, like I said, wow, because we've seen so many nonprofits get defunded, right? And it isn't just diversity, veterans, just so many different things. And he said to me, I said to him, will the sector ever come back to what it was? And because it used to be 1 out of every 5 jobs in the United States were nonprofit related. That was prior to 2025. So my question is, he said, the nonprofit industry will return if people have found that the services that they provide are helping and need to be done. And what's your thoughts on that?
So I think 2 thoughts, right? One is, in any civilized society, there are services that nonprofits provide that matter to that society, right? Whether they be food banks, whether they be religious, whether they be childhood development, like almost any society since the beginning of time has had people providing services, labor, goods for free for the betterment of that society. So there is a need for this. This has existed in every society recorded society going back thousands and thousands of years. Number 2 is, practically, as we think about kind of now, or just in the modern era, people provide kind of a nonprofit goods, services, funding when 2 things are true. When there's something, number 1, that they care about, that passion that you may have. I care about math education, for example. I volunteer my time in education there. I have a friend who cares a lot about religious rights. He spends a lot of time and effort, money there. So that's number 1. You have to have, something that you care about as others, an individual or society. And number 2, the society has to have kind of excess wealth that it can allocate towards those resources, towards those efforts, right? You have to have money. And right now we're obviously in a time that people feel a little, tighter belts, which means funding dries up in nonprofit, but times of aplenty constantly return, every few years. So I wouldn't be too worried about it from a long-term perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's interesting is the states that haven't really stopped providing funding to those nonprofits you mentioned. In other words, the homeless, the things that really affect the society inside of those states, they have not cut that funding. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because you have to think that if there is a new party that comes into play next in the next voting cycle, will they reallocate money now to the nonprofits that lost funding? And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I certainly hope they do.
Yeah,
I mean,
it may be different nonprofits, by the way, right? Like, unfortunately, some of their nonprofits may kind of fade out during the current administration or current environment, and may come back in different forms in the future, right? Where there's a need, right? If one food bank goes out of business, another one will eventually emerge, because that food banks, for example, just using them as an example, serve a need in our society. And that's kind of what's really important. Again, I want to emphasize this, that nonprofits serve a need, whether it be, feeding people, whether it be preserving arts, whether it be, promulgating a specific religion. They serve a purpose that our society, or at least individuals within our society, value.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, don't and listeners, don't. I give a lot of money myself to lots of nonprofits. Financing Solution gives 10% of our profits to back to nonprofits. So, we're a big proponent of it. We're not just in the business of providing lines of credit. We also believe in the sector ourselves. So, so don't get the wrong idea that, I want the nonprofits to excel, because we see internally, we always see the great work that they're doing. So, so let's talk a little bit about today's topic, which is how nonprofits can manage their finances better. And Nick, when you are inside and looking at income statements and balance sheets of nonprofits, for new clients, what is the first thing that sticks out to you about how they can better manage their finances?
So I think it's two things. And I'll talk a little bit about the smaller side of nonprofits, because I think larger nonprofits usually are a little bit better at this, either because they're legally required to be, or because they're boards of directors. I think the two things that I think are kind of I commonly see are, number one, that no one has actually spent time recording what happened financially. So just like basic bookkeeping, like, hey, we spent $100 on this, we got a $5,000 donation from person X. That all just needs to be recorded. And it's important for kind of two reasons. Number one is for compliance, right? Nonprofits are required to record all of this, report it to the government, as well as to their board of directors. So there's a compliance aspect. But number two is that, okay, knowing what happened is an important precursor to making decisions. And that's the second thing, right? Even for nonprofits that have recorded what happened financially in the past, often no one is looking at what to do with that information. That's kind of sad, because nonprofits are in this beautiful place where often they have access to really, really smart free labor, either on their boards or members of their community. You have people who are consultants or bankers who are willing, or business people who are willing to allocate their time and spend a couple of hours a month saying, okay, here's how our finances look and here's what we need to do about it. And the answer is often not as simple as just like, raise more money, right? That's often the first thing nonprofits think about. But like, there's lots of other ways that nonprofits can be run better financially. And like, they often have amazing access to resources for people who will do it for free and would charge a lot of money for a for-profit business to provide that same level of insight and analysis.
Yeah, I mean, do you find that smaller nonprofits do a good job with budgeting?
It's mixed, right? For those that have a budget, I think that yes, they do a pretty good job of budgeting as long as they don't make like ridiculously optimistic assumptions about donations. Um, the bigger challenge, as I said, is there's the recording of it, making kind of future decisions. Number two, and then number three is like making sure not to have expense overruns. One of the the important things is when you have a budget, you have to stick to it. So it's not about making the budget; it is adhering to what you said you would do.
Yeah. I know. I mean, when I ask my lead underwriter on this, we've been talking about this subject lately. We were going to write a white paper about it, and one of the things that she said was that nonprofits tend to be overly optimistic about the funds that are going to be coming in and when they're going to be coming in. Would you put some validity behind that?
I think some are, but I don't think it's a systematic problem. I think rather than optimism, I think some nonprofits fail at understanding that like the world changes. So it is
Yeah.
not that they are systematically optimistic about donations, but systematically optimistic about the state the world will be in. Right, the world could be a lot poorer, poor in 12 months. And you have to account for those scenarios when making that budgeting, right? And poverty is just one thing, right? Inflation could rise, there could be a war, and all of these things affect how people allocate their money, right? Given people, let's say use the current world as an example, right? And at the risk of getting political, a lot of people care a lot more about immigration related issues this year than they did, let's say, like 3-4 years ago. So people who may have been allocating money to religious charities are allocating them to immigration related charities this year.
Yeah.
And that is not because the world's poor, it's just because priorities change. And I think folks have to be in the nonprofit sector who are budgeting need to be aware that the world can change in ways that negatively or positively impact them. And they need to include this kind of a scenario modeling.
So if I'm sitting there running a nonprofit, and I've been on boards before, I'm not on any right now, but if I hear a comment like that about uncertainty and how unpredictable things are, the first thing that I start thinking of is, okay, well, our predictions are not going to be good. And the thing that we need to do is really, really reduce our expenses and really don't, have our expenses at a point where we just run so thin that if there's a big change, then in the world, so let's say, that will be okay.
So, sorry, what was the question you were asking there, Stephen? I didn't understand.
Yeah. Well, my question is I would then, if I would then advise a nonprofit that I was on, I'd say is we got to really, really just run our nonprofit very, really, really watch our expenses. Like don't hire that extra person. Don't make sure that we're running really mean and lean, so to speak. Is that something that you would advise your clients to do too?
Not really. I'd go a slightly different direction. Say, look, because when you're conservative, you're unable to take advantage of good opportunities that arise, or even serve your constituents well the way or your mission well. What I would say is rather than being conservative and preserving every dollar, which by the way, you should run a disciplined operation. That's true in nonprofit, in government, in business, whatever it is. You should always run a disciplined operation, but don't penny pinch every dollar. Instead, I think your operating plan as a nonprofit should be to be able to adjust as the world changes, right? So let's use let's use a simple example. It's okay to hire people, but you shouldn't, set up your contracts where you're stuck paying them for 5 years if the world changes, right? You need to have the ability to both flex your business down if things go, or not your business, your operations down if things go poorly. But conversely, if things are going well, you should be able to scale yourself up so you fulfill your mission more effectively.
What is typically the largest expense in smaller nonprofits?
Excluding those that are delivering a product like food, for example, it's almost always people. right? It is the people who are going out there and delivering goods. It is the people who are running those, after school programs. Because yes, there's some amount of volunteer labor, but volunteer labor tends to be unstructured and, can volunteer some weekends and not. But for most nonprofits that try and provide a consistent service, every Friday at 3 p.m. or whatever that is, they often need to have paid staff, and paid staff, need to be paid.
Yeah, I mean, I had a hunch it was payroll that was the largest expense. The problem is would you suggest that one of the things that people consider is having more temporary staff? I mean, I know it's hard to do, but if you have temporary staff, then the payroll costs can go up and down based on the how well the nonprofit is doing.
So they don't have to be temporary per se, but at will employment, right? As is very common in the private sector, almost every U.S. employee is at will, where the employer can let them go, 3 p.m. this afternoon. As opposed to, long-term, here's a 3-year contract for work. Where possible, I think nonprofits should take a page from the business's books and leave themselves flexibility. So it doesn't have to be temp labor, but it has to be labor that you are not locked into for, multiple months or multiple years. And not just labor, by the way. Like, if you're running a food bank, you shouldn't sign a fixed price, fixed volume contract that commits you for 10 years, and you're forced to be buying potato chips 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Even if you've gone out of business, that would be a bad contract to enter into. Same as food labor.
The problem you have is what I've often seen is in the nonprofit sector, a lot of times the people working for the nonprofit, the executive director and the board, have a little bit more of a emotional commitment to the people working there than, because a lot of times those people really are often accepting a lower pay because they believe in the cause. And therefore the loyalty that the leaders of the nonprofit have toward those people is stronger than it is in a for-profit sector. And listen, it's never easy to lay people off. I don't care if you're in a for-profit or a nonprofit. I just see, and I'd like to hear your comment about the idea that nonprofits are less likely to want to or be willing to let people go when their organization isn't doing so well.
So I think there's some truth to that, but look, I've been a CEO and CFO in private sector companies, and it's never easy to let somebody go. I think it's, there's very few people who are heartless enough to let to do a layoff and not care. There are some people like that. I'm not one of them, and I don't think most of the people I've encountered in my career. Like, most employers feel some level of loyalty to their employees, number one. So I don't want to paint everyone in the private sector as heartless, because I think most people aren't.
Yep.
In the nonprofit sector, when you are an executive director or board of directors, remember, you have kind of 3 core constituents. Number one, you have the mission, right? Whatever you're committed to, whether that be preserving art, whether that be feeding children, saving lives overseas, whatever that is. Number 2, you have an obligation to your donors, right? You have said they are giving you their money, their time, in exchange for you holding to that mission. And number 3, you have the organization itself, the staff. And yes, while you're committed to your employees or to the folks who are contributing their time and effort, you still have those obligations to those other 2 constituents. And I think that's a fiduciary obligation, right? That you as an executive director or you as a board are sworn to uphold. So it's okay to be loyal, but you have to balance that with the other needs of the organization. In fact, you're legally obligated to do so. And if you find it difficult to make that kind of balancing act, and you prioritize any one of those groups over the other 2, you're probably not doing a great job at being an ED or a board member, right? That's why these boards and executive directors exist, because they have the tough job of balancing constituencies.
Yeah, you're right. I completely. It's easy to forget that the donors are giving you the money, and you need to be responsible um, for making sure that that money is being used wisely, right? You kind of forget about that. You think about the cause that you're serving your employees, but you don't. At least I would have forgotten um, the my role in making sure that we're being fiscally responsible to those donors as well. So that's a great comment. So if let me ask you this: if let's say you get a new client, executive, you're talking to the exec director, and the executive director asks you this question. He or she says to you, um, Nick, give me, from your experience, give me three things that would help our organization make sure that we are watching our expenses and finances better. What would those three things be?
Number one, record your data properly, right? If there's not a data on what you spent money on, then it's really difficult for anybody else to go figure out, whether things went right or went poorly, whether that be board director, whether that be auditor, whatever. Like, just record that data. Number two, leverage free technology or discounted technology wherever possible. Not, most companies will offer discounted services to nonprofits, right? Examples like I'll use Slack as an example, the chat app, right? I believe they offer a significantly discounted or free version of their software for nonprofits. And a lot of nonprofits instead just go sign up, and when they could shoot off an email and save a few hundred or few $1,000s a year. The same is true with like a lot of email organizations and stuff. So you can send out all your email flyers for free or at a fraction of the price that for-profit institutions pay. So that's number two. Leverage the nonprofit status to try and get significant discounts. And by significant, I don't mean 10 or 15, but like 90 or 99% discount that a lot of private sector organizations, particularly in technology, give out to nonprofits. And number three, hire someone with private sector experience hire or have someone on your board with private sector experience who understands how to manage costs, right? I think, and you kind of alluded to, a lot of people in the nonprofit sector are very mission oriented, and that's good because you want people who are aligned with your mission and care about what that organization stands for. But in the actual running of your nonprofit, you should have someone who's managed a P&L, who understands costs, who understands like opportunities to drive efficiencies, because that will help your organization run leaner, more disciplined, and achieve its mission better. Whether that person be a member of your staff, be a member of your executive team, or on the board, someone who just has that skill set.
When you're acting as, let's say, a CFO, part-time CFO for a nonprofit, and as you start to go work with them closer, I'm sure first thing is making sure that things are being recorded correctly in the either accounting software or even an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. What is typically, how does the engagement progress? What is the advice that you're typically giving people? I don't mean specifically, but where does it usually gravitate toward?
I think, look, it's a delicate balance when you're providing financial advice versus, mission-oriented advice, right? As a financial officer, fractional internal consultant, or, an advisor, my job or our job is to, give advice on what is most financially prudent. And sometimes, most of the time it should align with the mission, but sometimes it contradicts the mission. And I think that's important to handle delicately, not only from a political perspective and like kindness perspective, but also because there are conflicting incentives. As a financial officer, financial advisor, you're supposed to say like, this is the right thing to do from a math or finance perspective. And you have to frame that advice in a way that it does not conflict with the mission unless there's an absolutely like black and white line to be drawn.
Yeah, I would think, though, to be honest with you, is that to have somebody in the room who's a naysayer, and that's not the right word, someone who is willing to tell me a different story is really what I'm paying you for. Right. I
I
mean,
mean, that's nice to think, but that's not often true, right? Like most organizations, both private and sector and public sector, people are paid to be yes men or yes women, right? Or
yeah.
at least it feels better when they
But you
are.
don't work for the organization and being outside. Well, no, I guess I can see that either way.
Look, no one wants to be the naysayer, right?
Yeah,
And no one
yeah,
likes having a naysayer in the room. You don't want the negative person in your group of friends. Well-run organizations encourage that, but it's often really difficult to be that outsider, even if you're a member of the organization, even if you're full-time. It could be CEO, could be the accountant, could be the marketer, right? If you're a marketer who has a different approach to marketing than the organization's been doing, you're going to feel a little bit like an outsider, right? Well-run organizations encourage dissent, but it is difficult for most organizations to be comfortable enough in their own skin where they accept dissent.
yeah. Have you found that that the nonprofits got caught off guard in 2025 in regards to future revenues?
Honestly, I don't have enough evidence to have a perspective on that, so I'll pass on that question. I apologize.
Yeah, and any guess? I don't know if your answer is that, which is fine. Do you still have not enough evidence to say? Do you think that the clients you're working with in 2026 are being more conservative now?
Yeah, I think for 2026, nonprofits are being a little bit more conservative because there is
Yeah, I mean, it
just a
kind of.
tremendous amount of uncertainty in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think this always happens when there's a recession, when there is something major going on, that it takes people a while, and I include myself in this, of course. It takes us all a while. We're like deer in headlights in the beginning. And then you kind of come back to, oh, this is the new reality. And it takes you a little bit of time to kind of grapple with that. And then after that comes an action plan. Then you're like ready for action. You're like, okay, this is the new world. And now we have to do this, this, and this. Is that, would you add to anything like that?
No, I think you characterized it exactly. There's a delay between an impetus and the action that it stimulates.
Have the nonprofits that have brought you on today been different in what they wanted than the ones that were coming on, let's say, a year or two ago?
Sure. So look, our firm is reasonably new. We've only been around a couple of months, so we weren't acquiring clients a year ago. But I would say this, right? The clients that do bring us on tend to be quite different from the typical nonprofit in that they want. We are not an accounting firm. We are a strategic advisory or analysis firm. So our clients tend to be either already be or want to be more sophisticated in thinking kind of towards the future than just than asking for kind of accounting services. So we'd like to think that our clients are either already smarter or want to be or have a progressive desire to be smarter about how they manage their operations.
If they want you to do the accounting work, do you do that, or do you kind of find somebody else to do it?
We typically will either recommend them to someone or manage someone for them. We are, doing it ourselves would not be cost effective, and it would be, it would be not in our fiduciary or not even fiduciary. It wouldn't be ethical for us to charge our kind of rates to do accounting work that they could get at 1/10 the cost.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a couple of minutes left. Based on this topic that we're kind of talking about today, which has to do with how nonprofits can manage their finances better. What are some of the things that you really kind of, when you thought about coming on today, that you kind of wanted to make sure that everybody understood?
I think three things. Number one is that there's technology is amazing, and I think it is dramatically underpenetrated in smaller nonprofits or even some larger nonprofits that, there's so much free or dirt cheap technology out there and software out there that nonprofits should be using it. Google free software for whatever, ask ChatGPT. There's lots of stuff out there that people should be using. Number two is, I think, people or especially in the nonprofit world, they think of kind of finances as just managing the expenses side of things rather than thinking about, hey, it's actually important, in fact, our legal obligation to do our accounting right. Or if we want to achieve our mission, we need to be doing analysis for the future. So stop thinking of finance as a expense management function and think about it both in the compliance recording aspect as well as thinking about in the future. And whether you do that again in-house with a member of the executive team, someone on the board, or hire an external firm like ours, like those are all acceptable options depending on where your organization is. And then third, like measure things, and not just financial things, but measure the operations of your ambition. Like how many people did you help, or how many objects did you save, or whatever your mission is. Measure it. Measurement is critical, not just in a finance function, but in an operational function. Have your KPIs, go quantify it, and ask yourself, hey, did we do better than we did yesterday? Because that's what every organization should aspire to do.
Yeah. Oh, I like those three things. I think they really hit the nail on the head. So that's kind of all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank so very much Nick Jain from Eagle Rock CFO for coming on today's podcast. And if you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And if you want to learn a little bit more about a line of credit for your organization, please feel free to visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And Nick, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. Our website is eaglerockcfo.com. No funny letters or dashes or anything like that. On there, you have the contact information for both me, my business partner, Dan. Our emails, our LinkedIns are all on there, eaglerockcfo.com. We also provide, I was remiss to mention, we also provide just a bunch of free software for anyone, profits, nonprofits, no strings attached whatsoever.
Great. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So I just want to remind everybody, I mean, we're into now, the recording of this is February 17th of 2026. And everybody is in their second months of their New Year's resolutions. And I just want to remind everybody listening that first, I know Nick and I want to thank you all for trying to make the world a better place. I know both Nick and I are doing it in our own ways, but you guys are out there in the front line every single day, and we really need you. The world's got some problems, and we really need to help from you. But don't forget that at the end of the day, you need to really make sure that you're taking good care of yourself, because you're no good to your cause, your employees, your family, your friends, if you're burnt out. And we all know that happens a lot in this industry. So make sure you're doing the things that helps you be healthy and have the energy that allows you to do this for a long time, whether that be exercising or meeting up with a friend for coffee or meditating or praying, whatever it is that works for you. You need to think about yourself first every morning, and then you can help everybody else around you. So please keep that in mind as you're looking at your New Year's resolutions, and I hope that we're all keeping, which is always tough. Other than that, I want to thank you for listening to the Nonprofit MBA Podcast, and have a fantastic day, everybody.